So yeah, we're obviously in the Disney era, and that's a big deal because Ahsoka Tano really comes from the final effort of George Lucas. The Clone Wars animated series came out in 2008. In fact, it did not do well. I don't know how many people remember, but the Clone Wars animated series launched with a movie release. Dave Filoni released it as a movie. It was like an hour and a half, and it did terrible at the theaters. And I've seen the movie. It's not very good. It's hard to watch. Ahsoka Tano is introduced in this movie as a very teeny bopper Padawan to Anakin, and she calls him Sky Guy, and he's calling her Snips, and it just, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, it was really bad. So I never really cared too much about the Clone Wars after I saw the movie, but I had heard that back in around 2010, 2011, I heard that the cartoon was actually very good. It was, at the time, this was before streaming, so it came out on the Cartoon Network. And I think my view today is that this really is disguised as a children's cartoon. The Clone Wars animated series, which heavily features Ahsoka Tano. She's a main character. And Anakin Skywalker, who is portrayed in the animated series as very heroic. I actually really liked him in the animated series because in the prequels, Anakin came across in Attack of the Clones as a little bit of like an emo, teeny kind of guy. I didn't really get the impression of him as being the future of Darth Vader in Attack of the Clones. Revenge of the Sith, I liked him much better. Revenge of the Sith, I still like as a movie. It's rewatchable. It's something that the prequels that I thought was very good. I actually have a very good opinion of Revenge of the Sith. But Anakin was always a little off, I felt. Like, could you imagine if they cast like Chris Hemsworth or someone big and imposing to play a Jedi Knight, and someone like Kenneth Branagh, someone who doesn't seem about the same age as Anakin, someone who's a little bit older? That might have been the dynamic that would have worked. But as it was, my thoughts on Anakin were kind of hazy. So when I watched the Clone Wars animated series, and Anakin is heroic and a man of action and in charge and a smart mentor and, a good leader, and not at all, there was no emotionalism out of him. The voice actor did a great job. The animators were up to the task. And then you've got Ahsoka Tano, his Padawan, who, as the series went on, got better and better and better. And I'll just tell you, I'm a huge fan of the Clone Wars. The animated series itself is a little bit of a hybrid. Half of the episodes, roughly, are very children-like shows. Silly shows that I wouldn't recommend anyone to watch. An R2-D2 adventure of stealing fruit in an alien fruit basket in a princely setting on some planet. Dumb, like not good. There's a Jar Jar Binks episode. It got to the point where I had to start logging which episodes to skip. And I have an entire record of all the episodes I've watched and whether this is real Star Wars or little kid Star Wars. Little kid Star Wars you could skip. The real Star Wars episodes are some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen. So I'll just say that. It has some of the best action. The animation levels are unparalleled. It won many awards. It won many voice acting awards. And this show was going crazy. And Ahsoka Tano became front and center during the Clone Wars. So early in season 1, she moved from calling him Sky Guy and this little teeny bopper to someone a little bit more competent and serious as Anakin's Padawan. And the two had a chemistry. It was very strong mentor-student, mentor-pupil Jedi relationship. Anakin was a smart and compassionate mentor. He was a good mentor. There were several times I was like, man, Anakin strikes me as a really good Jedi in the Clone Wars, like the kind of guy that you're happy is on your side. And while watching, I remember thinking what a loss Anakin was to the good guys by watching. I never got that sense in watching the movies, but when you watch the Clone Wars animated series, you're like, this guy is a major front and center lead from the front hero. What a loss! What a loss Anakin was, and Ahsoka, his up and coming, got all of his wisdom and expertise passed on to him. She helped him at times. She saved his life a couple times in very good, convincing ways. And I became a rabid fan of the Clone Wars. I began to talk about it to everybody. I made one YouTube video in my life, really, and it was about Ahsoka Tano, where I make my case that she's one of the best Star Wars figures. So what happened? Disney bought the Lucasfilm in 2012, and they scrapped the Clone Wars. They canceled it. And what's crazy is that the Clone Wars was not tapering off in viewership. It was ramping up. So in season 5, it had the highest viewing. It was super popular. The word had started to spread, and that's when Disney canceled it. And that's when Disney, after 1 year, came out with Rebels as their replacement. And after the first season, Rebels was very so-so. It wasn't that great. The animation was a clear step down. To this day, I don't like the animation in Rebels. So the first season was really wonky. They brought in Dave Filoni. They brought in the team that did the Clone Wars, and he immediately reintroduced Ahsoka Tano into Rebels. And let me tell you, some of the episodes in Rebels were also way up at the top. They have an entire episode where Darth Vader comes in, voiced by James Earl Jones. Funny enough, he's on the planet that is in the first episodes of Ahsoka on Disney Plus. And he fights Ahsoka Tano eventually in the Rebels series. And it is a lightsaber battle with all the gravitas you could want. It's his former Padawan facing her old mentor who had turned to the dark side, Anakin Skywalker we're talking about. And they hash it out. It's just great stuff. I can't recommend it enough. Rebels steadily got better. They reintroduced Grand Admiral Thrawn into the Rebels show. And he's voiced so perfectly by the actor. I think the same actor who's playing him. Is that correct?
Nicholson, right?
Yes. He's incredible. And by the way, I have read, I have read all the Timothy Zahn books. I have them all right here. I read them right when they came out. So I was very familiar with Grand Admiral Thrawn as a character, and he was a great character way back in the 90s when the world first met him. That's Mad's brother.
Okay. So thank you for that. Mad's brother. So that's what this is. Lars Mikkelsen, who's playing Grand Admiral Thrawn.
And
so
as a voice, I strongly recommend most of the episodes of later seasons of Rebels, especially the ones with Grand Admiral Thrawn. The voice acting is impeccable. It's so good. He is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Grand Admiral Thrawn is famous for those of you who don't know, who haven't read the books, and he's blue skinned. He's a Grand Admiral, so he wears a white Imperial uniform. He was a genius. He was at the Battle of Endor and survived. And according to the Timothy Zahn books, he took what's called the Imperial Remnant and rebuilt some semblance of a fighting military force and begins to attack the New Republic. And he's a very good opponent for the New Republic. And one of his things is he's not a Force user, Grand Admiral Thrawn. He is just a brilliant thinker. And when he goes to a planet, before he invades it, he studies the art, the poetry, and his chamber, his captain's chamber or admiral's chamber on the Star Destroyer, is holograms of the planet's artwork. So he sits there with all these holograms floating around him, and he studies them, and he learns what the intelligent civilization fears most and what their weaknesses are based on their art, and he uses that to invade effectively. So he's a great villain. Well, Disney, who can't seem to get anything right, decided to take someone else's idea of a great villain and bring him in to Rebels, and they did a good job. So, as far as I'm concerned, Disney was riding the wave of kind of a lot of what came before, and they did release season 7 of the Clone Wars, and the final 4 episodes are some of the best Star Wars there is. Ahsoka Tano is one of the main characters of the final 4 episodes, and she had quit the Jedi Order, and she returns to the Jedi as a ally to help them with a problem on Mandalore. Darth Maul, who was reintroduced in season 3 of Clone Wars, who had survived, and his voice acting is won awards. He was voiced so well. He returns, and he's taking over Mandalore, and the clone troopers, when they see their former commander return as an ally to help them with this issue on Mandalore, paint their clone armor in the orange face configuration of Ahsoka Tano. And I'll show you just this is what it looks like. So there's an entire battalion of clones who painted their helmets like this, and as to honor their former commander. And it's funny because they're like, when they see her, they're like, "It's good to see you again, Commander." And she goes, "Oh, I'm not really a member of the Galactic Republic Order, so you can't call me Commander anymore." And he's like, "You got it, Commander." Just great stuff. They really respect Ahsoka Tano, and yeah, isn't it pretty cool? So so when I heard that they were going to do a live action version of Ahsoka Tano, I was jacked. So I'll just put that out there. I was not. I'm the perfect guy for this. I had gotten on board with the Clone Wars early. I watched every episode of the Clone Wars and every episode of Rebels. So I'm fully up to date. I heard on a lot of other YouTube channels you have to have watched both of those shows in order to understand what's happening. I have, and I still was confused. So I'll just let you know, if you're confused, you're not. There's nothing wrong with you. So, but as the trailers came out, and as I have become, and Heath and most of the people on this channel, students of the Kathleen Kennedy administration of Lucasfilm and the Disney version of Star Wars, I had some concerns in the trailer. It looked very female driven, very female heavy, which that by itself doesn't bother me, but that in the hands of Kathleen Kennedy Lucasfilm it was a serious red flag for me. But the rest of it looked good, the trailer. And then last week, finally, Ahsoka Tano came out, and I got to watch the first 2 episodes. Heath, I think you said you saw the episodes as well.
I saw them last night.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I saw them last night.
So this is a perfect discussion. You have someone, Heath has not seen all of the, he doesn't have all that lore underneath. He's able to sit down and watch it, straight up. Like he knows Star Wars through and through. So he's going to be able to give an opinion or a perspective of coming in, just raw into Ahsoka. And then I can add some commentary on what it's like to know it all as far as her storyline and, what I thought of it.
Sable Phoenix is adding a clarification. Was it true that Sable Phoenix says no Captain Palian or Palian Endor? Thrawn was in the outer region because he's an alien?
And the Emperor was a racist.
Do we have a fact? Yeah, and the Emperor was racist.
That might be right. I am loose on that canon. Thank you, Sable. If that is correct, I really appreciate that. I do know Captain Paleon was there. I remember, I think there's a flashback sequence or a discussion about that. And I think they even discussed why the battle turned against the Empire on that, as if analyzing tactical errors of the Battle of Endor and how the Empire should not have lost that, which is awesome to dramatize that.